Okay, I think we're ready to get started. It is great to join you this morning. Good morning, Mississippi Valley Division, and welcome to today's episode of In the Valley. Today's spotlight is on a very special portion of our workforce whose duties and responsibilities directly contribute to the operation of the Mississippi River. Of course, the Mississippi River is everyone's business in MVD, but I think it's important to get to know those who are so closely tied to it on a day-to-day basis. In fact, most of us support them, not the other way around. Of note, the employees who work these specialties, as well as some specialties that we won't be covering today, have been mostly on duty at their place of duty throughout the pandemic. Their skills and functions are not only mission essential, but also essential for them to be at the workplace, on the river, or nearby. And despite the pandemic, they couldn't do their work remotely or via telework. So that means that these employees have faced higher risk, and it required their supervisors, such as the three that you see on the screen and that I'm going to be interviewing. That means that they've had to find other ways, creative ways, to go above and beyond to keep their people safe. Sometimes that meant creative shift work, extra protocols aboard vessels or in their facilities, lots and lots of COVID testing, but they have done these things very well. We appreciate them so much. It's also worth highlighting that most of the employees in these functions are wage grade employees as distinct from general schedule or GS employees. Sometimes we refer to wage grade as blue collar employees. Substantively, the principal difference is that they are paid in accordance with the federal wage system, which is a uniform pay setting system that covers employees who are paid by the hour. The system's purpose is to make sure that federal trade, craft, and laboring employees within a local wage area who perform the same duties receive the same rate of pay. And I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later, some of the challenges associated with that. The general schedule, GS, is a separate pay system covering most other civilian federal employees, sometimes referred to as white-collar workers. Surveys of non-federal employers, including state and local governments, determine the pay for GS employees. So now, time for introductions. Today's panel consists of 3 leaders from MVD. We have a lockmaster, a dredge boat captain, and the chief of the mat sinking unit. During my visits throughout the region, I've had the opportunity to meet each of them. I've learned a lot from them and thought they'd be the right leaders to share this fascinating side of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So without further ado, our panelists are Ms. Jane Mathison, a lockmaster and supervisor assigned to the St. Paul District. Jane currently serves at Lock and Dam number 8 and will share some insights about the role of lockmasters, their teams, and how they contribute to the Corps' mission. Jane, why don't you wave at the camera? All right, there she is in the red polos, and you see the background, that's her lock and dam in the background. We've got Captain Edward Morehouse, master and captain of the Dredge WHEELER. Ed is assigned to the New Orleans District and will educate us a little bit about the role that dredges play and how they contribute to the Corps' mission. I also want to note that Ed was recently named the 2021 recipient of the USACE Operations and Maintenance Castle Award. Ed, if you would wave at the camera. And if I'm not mistaken, you are aboard your vessel right now near Calcasieu?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thanks for being on. And last but not least, Mr. Barry Sullivan, Chief of the Mat Sinking Unit and assigned to the Vicksburg District. You see him waving there in the light blue shirt. Barry will share some insights about the mission of this one-of-a-kind capability. So thanks to the 3 of you for volunteering your time and helping to tell your story to our audience. I also want to note that we have a sign language interpreter, Danae Smith. You see her on the screen there. I will attempt to not talk so fast, Danae, so that you can keep up with me. But thank you for joining us today. One administrative note, please keep your mics on mute unless you're one of the panelists. And please keep your video off. We don't want to overwhelm, unless you're on the panel or our sign language interpreter, because we don't want to crash the network with too many people on video. So to get us started, I'd like each of our panelists to take 2 to 3 minutes to say a little about yourselves, perhaps where you're from, when you joined the Corps, what motivated you to go into your professional career field, and or anything else you'd like to share as an introduction. And we'll go in alphabetical order and start with Jane.
Good morning. Thank you, ma'am, for that introduction. Again, my name is Jane Mathison. I'm a lockmaster here in St. Paul District. I grew up in a neighboring town here along the river, small town on the Minnesota side called the Crescent, population there about 5,000. Left the area for a while for school and the military, and came back, and I've been with the Corps now about 23 years. And I worked my way up as a laborer through the lock operator ranks. I began my career at this site as a laborer at Lock and Dam 8, moved to another site for the majority of my career, and then returned here as supervisor in 2016. Currently, I'm married. I have 4 kids. One of them still at home in high school as a junior, 3 others, 2 in college, and 1 out off working. So my husband's general manager at a Sullivan water store, and as a manager himself, just one thing to share about me is I feel fortunate to have someone at home with the understanding when you can talk about supervisory or management type of issues. We share and trade some information back and forth, and find some helpful things for my husband there at home. But regarding my motivation for coming on as a lockmaster, I didn't always want to be a lockmaster, and I didn't realize I wanted to be in a supervisory role until about 4 years into my career with the Corps. At that time, I worked my way up, as I mentioned, through the operator ranks, became a head operator. I loved volunteering and taking on new challenges. I loved to continue my education, and I think it just kind of evolved that I decided to return to get my college degree in management, in supervisory management, and this role fell in my lap. I wasn't seeking it per se with the college degree. I thought I needed to move elsewhere to stay in that role, but it worked out wonderfully for me. And so yeah, being a supervisor and being the best supervisor that I can be here at Lock 8 has now been my focus.
Great. Thank you, Jane. Appreciate that introduction. And we will now go to Captain Ed Morehouse. Sir, over to you. Sir, I think you're muted.
Pulled the classic mistake, didn't I? Sorry about that. Thank you and welcome. I'm Captain Morehouse, Edward Morehouse from the New Orleans District, master of the Dredge WHEELER. I am originally from Florida and moved all around as a child matriculating through high school and college. I'm a graduate of the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy in New York, one of the 5 service academies, and from Kings Point, which I graduated from in 1980. I went straight into the merchant marine shipping out on ships. My goal and career and desire was to become a ship's captain. Years. It's what is inbred into any graduate of a service academy to serve their field. My intent was to be sailing the 7 seas and the world and become a true deep blue sea captain. And I sidetracked to the Corps of Engineers back in 1980 on a 1947 built steamship dredge, the Langford, in New Orleans. I'd only intended to be here for, I had been doing some sailing overseas, and I had only intended on being here for a few weeks or a few months, and for some reason it grabbed me, and now I'm living my dream as the captain of this ship, and have been doing it for 41 years. So it's my own personal story of fulfillment that the Corps provided. I'm married, living in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania now, and wife and children who have all matriculated out. So it's just the two of us now in Philadelphia and enjoying life there when I'm off the ship. So that's the short and sweet about me.
All right, thanks, Ed. And moving on to Barry. Sir, over to you.
Yes, ma'am, I'm doing good. How are you doing this morning?
Outstanding, thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity. I grew up in a little town and have recently moved back there called Transylvania, Louisiana. It's kind of a curve in the road, but with a very small population. But I grew up there and basically in a farming community. And then I went on to Louisiana Tech in civil engineering. And I graduated from Louisiana Tech in civil engineering in '87. And then I went to work for the Corps. I had worked for the Corps during college at Waterways, as it was called at the time. But when I graduated, the Corps had a hiring freeze on. So I worked for an engineering firm for a couple of years, a private firm doing water and sewer work, and I enjoyed that. But then an opening came in hydraulics branch in Vicksburg, and I spent about 17 years of my career in that area, working in both hydraulics and hydrology, and also in a good bit of time in the water quality unit there. And later on, I got an opportunity to go into operations division. And having done quite a few studies, I'd enjoyed my time in hydraulics, but it was time I wanted to do something more that was more hands-on. So that I started out in the navigation unit there as a chief, and then went to the dredging unit as a chief of that unit. And then in 2015, I was selected as the chief of the mat sinking unit. And that has been my career in life since then. When we started, when I accepted the job, they said, okay, we go out on the river and about 3 or 4 months out of the year during the low water part of the year, and we put mat on the banks. I said, sounds great. We live out there. Well, the needs have risen a little bit more for bank protection. So it's close to about half a year on the river and half a year at the house now, but I do enjoy what I do, and I'm blessed to have that opportunity.
All right, thank you, Barry. And you said that you wanted something a little more hands-on, and I think that's exactly, you got what you asked for, I think, with the mat sinking unit. So clearly a good fit. Okay, so I'd like to switch questioning now to each of you in your particular communities. Beginning with you, Jane, what exactly is a lockmaster, and what does it take to become one? Perhaps talk a little bit about what credentials, experiences, or training is required.
Yes, thank you. Actually, as a lockmaster, I'm the overall manager of a field site with supervisory responsibility at this location with approximately 14 employees. I ensure safe and efficient operations of the lock and dam here at this particular site. While there's no formal degree, college degree per se, to become a lockmaster, eligible candidates come from either the equipment repairer series or the lock operator series. And usually only after years of experience and lots of knowledge under the belt. I can also add that many of the hiring panels that I've been on recently for other supervisory roles within these operation ranks many of these candidates actually, to make themselves more competitive for lockmaster positions here in St. Paul, they realize to make themselves stand out, they need to take supervisory courses, management training, whether that be via college, in-house training, independent training on their own. They'll volunteer for different details, making, again, their skill set, their knowledge base as broad as it can be, so that they can have that competitive edge. And overall, basically, they're developing themselves to take on that lockmaster role of leading people.
Well, thanks, Jane. I think that's insightful that some of the things that you identified, I think all of our fields are seeing that what may have made you qualified or competitive a decade or two ago, the standard or the expectations have only grown, whether it's formal training or self-development. So that's great insight. Thank you. So sticking with the lockmaster function, what are the primary duties of a lockmaster? And then the follow-on question would be, why are the functions of a lockmaster critical, or the lock maybe in general? How is this critical to the USACE mission?
Yes, duties and functions of a lockmaster basically is to for effective mission execution, and overall that consists of 100% availability of the navigation lock here at my site and the operation of the dam portion, which regulates the river in my location, managing the workload while ensuring work safety environment for all the folks, leading organizational change, at my level. Anything that is pushed down from the upper chain of command at my level is my responsibility. And executing my individual budget is in a fiscally responsible manner. Part of that falls under me. Developing my employees and working to strengthen the relationships within my team. That last piece, it's ironic that I put it at the end, but I find that that's one of the most important pieces, is to, manage, and that's a general word, but manage my team. And that's on a personal note, from their home life into the work setting and back again, whatever is happening, good or bad. I am the supervisor, and I am the coach, the mentor, the counselor, to ensure that all of that is operating smoothly for them and for our workplace as a whole. The critical reason, or how we are actually critical to USACE's mission, is all of these duties ensure that Lock 8 within the St. Paul District is adequately supporting inland navigation and the 9-foot navigation channel project on the upper Mississippi, so that ultimately vessels can transport their goods to and from St. Louis on up and down.
Yes, so it obviously takes a lot of skills and a lot of attributes to do the job that you're doing and to be a supervisor in this particular role. What do you feel has contributed to your success as a lockmaster?
Success, I think, for me, the goal has always been to better each individual. The success of the team actually shows the success of myself here at the site. That's how I look at it. If my success is shown because my team is successful. So if I can better each individual on my team, again, through coaching, mentoring, engaging, whatever that is, their development is primary, and increasing their skill set, working as a team is what I measure success at. But in order to do that, I personally feel that I need to be self-aware of my own limitations and be able to work on those before I can help and ask my team to work on, their limitations and go above and beyond for me and for our team. So at Lock 8, I think collectively my crew would probably agree that we call ourselves our own family, Lock 8 family. We take care of each other, yet we do hold each other accountable. And I think that's what makes a strong team and ultimately is a success for our site.
Yeah, and I think you've touched on this a little bit, and I just want to follow up one thing, one aspect of this. Can you describe a challenge that you face or that Lock and Dam number 8 family faces as it goes about its business? Something you think that is important for the rest of us to know about your family there at Lock 8?
Yeah, challenge, one thing that rises to the top and probably will always be a challenge is managing a 24/7 operation with shift workers. In that, my rotation of folks, sometimes I don't see them other than once a week. I work a day shift, Monday through Friday. My folks rotate around a 24-hour shift. And when they're off for 7 days or more, I lose connection. And again, I feel that being engaged and connecting with my folks is a big part of the success here. And so I have to work hard in trying to find those avenues. When are they going to be working? Is their time or their project they're working on going to permit me to, take a little bit of that time and ascertain how are they doing? What are their needs? The windows, and then especially with COVID, seem that much smaller, when dealing with rotating shift work and, helping continue to solidify our team and helping them grow to remain strong and successful.
Well, thank you, Jane, for your thoughtful answers. Really appreciate those insights. So at this time, we're going to transition over to Captain Morehouse. Ed, when we met earlier this year, you told me that the Wheeler is the largest boat in the Army. And I wasn't surprised by that. In fact, I'll digress a moment. The dredges that I had become familiar with in my previous job as a South Atlantic Division commander were the shallow draft dredges. So I thought I knew what a dredge looked like. And I arrive at the New Orleans district, my first visit to the district, actually any district, came around the corner of the district headquarters, and there was this massive vessel parked right there in front of the district. And I was woefully ignorant of the size and the capability of the vessel that you lead. That's what was there, was the Dredge WHEELER. It was in for repairs. So I wasn't surprised when you told me that it's the largest boat in the Army. Please share with the audience some of the interesting facts about your vessel. What makes the Wheeler so unique?
Yes, ma'am. We bring it, don't we? When you walk up, you've seen a dredge now, and that was actually kind of the purpose. The Wheeler is unique in her construction, in that she came at a time to be the pinnacle of the new core dredge fleet, what was called and still is the federal minimum dredge fleet. Back in the 1980s, late 70s and 1980s, when the Corps transitioned from primary dredging functions for hopper dredges, everything that was done by the private sector at that time was inland dredging, stationary dredges, and cutter heads, things like that. And hopper dredging was back then relatively progressing, burgeoning field and technology, and very efficient for United States dredging because of the nature of our seaports and the need, the fact that they're by nature shallow draft, and the need to deepen them and keep them maintained rapidly without a lot of mobilization. So at the same time, the private sector was building their fleet of hopper dredges and their expertise, and the Corps made a decision to basically get out of the dredging business for hopper dredging, turn this over to the private sector. I'm simplifying it quite a lot, but and at the same time maintain the viability, mission readiness, maintain the core mission by building a fleet of the most modern, the most efficient, and the most capable dredges in the U.S., along with research and development platforms to maintain the Corps' expertise in the dredging function. So the Wheeler was the showboat of this, and she was the largest. She's the only dredging ship in the world that has a third drag arm, a center drag arm on the center of the hull, which is twice the size of the overside drag arms. She's got pumping power that is unmatched with any other dredge at the time in the United States. She was designed for the most difficult dredging location in the United States, the Mississippi River, the lower Mississippi River, where when the dredging season began, it required usually a fleet of 4 or 5 hopper dredges to maintain the channel. Once the Wheeler came out, it was just a Wheeler, and for particular areas of the river. So she also was built to naval standards, built under Navy supervisor shipbuilding inspection, along with Coast Guard and national safety standards. She's built to withstand significant. She's built for overseas operations, deployment worldwide. She's built for redundancy of equipment, technology, all these various things between research and development platforms and efficient dredging. So in that case, when she came out in 1980, it was the largest, most sophisticated hopper dredge in the United States. And she doesn't hold that moniker anymore, but she's still the largest in the Army.
Well, let's hope we can keep bragging about that. We want to continue to say that we have the largest vessel in the Army. So thanks for that explanation. Ed, if you could also share with the audience, even perhaps a more basic question, which is, what is the purpose of a dredge? What does dredging do for the USACE mission? Why do we have these dredges? Why are they so important to the Mississippi River?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I touched on it before. The United States is by nature a shallow draft nation of seaports, and at the same time, we're an island continent, so to speak. We're in the middle of 2 oceans, and commerce, international trade is one of the most important features of our economy, and we have to get. Especially this has come to light nowadays with the shortage of goods due to COVID, but we have to get ships in and out of our ports and maintain channel entrances to the depth and dimensions necessary to maintain a good flow of commerce. Ships are getting larger, they're getting deeper draft, and dredging is becoming more and more of a challenge. Then you have environmental factors, storms, hurricanes, flood events, things like that. So all of these require dredges of different types depending on the need to maintain these channels. And a hopper dredge, there's different types of dredges to do this work. There's the very extremely efficient and accurate, precise dredging, which is cutter head stationary pipeline dredges, which is what most people are the most familiar with. And they have a cutter head which they spud or anchor the dredge down and very carefully sweep from side to side. They can dredge almost anything, create new channels, do very precise work to specific guidelines. Excuse the clock going off there. The hopper dredges are more of a fire engine type dredge, or what we call the giant vacuum cleaners. We go in and where the shoaling has occurred, where there are problems with a channel that come up, we don't require excessive mobilization. We basically sail the ship, show up on site, put drag arms on the bottom, and load the material into our hopper. Just giant vacuum cleaners on the side of the ship that go down at a 45-degree angle. The actual designation is a trailing suction hopper dredge. The arms are on the bottom of the shoal, and giant centrifugal pumps suck up the material just like a road grader into our hopper. Instead of carrying cargo of oil or containers, we carry mud. We load the hopper in about we travel along at about 2 miles an hour up against the current, and in various ranges to get over the shoal. We accurately position the drag heads of the ship. We have a swath of about 100 feet that we dredge at a time, and in about, depending on the material, in about between 30 minutes to an hour, we've loaded the equivalent of 730 dump trucks worth of sand and mud into our hopper. We then pick up everything and take it. We have two choices. We take it out to sea to an authorized disposal area offshore and dispose of it there where it's out of the way. We basically help with the river current and channel should be doing. Or we hook up to a pipeline and pump ashore as a cutterhead dredge would do. That's at least a less efficient method of dredging, but it's better for beneficial use of the material. We can rebuild marshlands and wetlands, things like that. So basically, the short of it is giant road grader of the sea.
Giant road grader of the sea. I'm going to write that one down. Yeah, I don't know, I didn't appreciate the dredging requirements of our nation until I came to USACE in 2017. It is massive. The requirement is massive. I think probably underappreciated unless you're directly involved in it. A dynamic river like the Mississippi moves an awful lot of sediment around, and normally it's where you don't want it. So, in order to keep the channel open and keep things safe and continue to be this engine of our economy, dredging is essential. I mean, it's a game changer for us. So probably underappreciated. So good to share that with those outside of your community, or maybe even USACE, that don't understand that. To you in particular, Ed, in your community that you lead, your crew that you lead, the team that you lead, could you describe a challenge that you face as a leader, that you or your team face in the dredging community?
Yes, ma'am. The very similar to what Jane described. We are shift workers here, and we work a 2-week on and 2-week off schedule here. Unlike classic shipboard life, and it's actually one of the attractions of a job with the Corps. We have a crew right now. It's 38 members in the crew on two working tours, and it's more than just a captain, chief engineer, and crew environment. It's a family environment on here. We unlike shoreside operations, we live and eat and sleep on the dredge when we're on duty. So we're a family that lives together, not just a team. And as such, unlike other vessels or classic maritime vessels, we know each other more intimately than would be normal. We know each other's families, and we know, we're concerned about the personal lives and the time off that people have. And so you want to stay connected, with the individuals, and you want to keep them in a happy and safe working environment. And from a captain's point of view, I want to keep them alive. And, when we're all living on here and we're still, when we're off duty and relaxing, we're still in danger. The ship is still operating. So it's that's the challenge, I think, is to keep people satisfied so that when they're away from their family and homes, we still have a productive environment that's based on caring their personal environment. So it's a challenge to keep up with that part of it when the general nature would be to, I got my own things to worry about. I'm at home now. Leave me alone. It doesn't go away. You're constantly worrying about a larger family.
Yeah, that's it. Definitely a unique aspect of the culture in which you work. So in the spirit of maritime tradition, I'm going to ask you something that's that is of the maritime tradition. Can you tell us the significance of a plank owner?
Yes, the plank owner, it's an old Navy tradition and merchant marine tradition. One side note is the merchant marine ships and commerce was the original Navy in the United States, right? They were the first defenders of our country. But naval vessels and merchant vessels were all made of wood, iron men and wooden ships. And the tradition, it's long tradition of the sea, is whoever is the first crew of a sailing vessel, a wooden ship, whoever the first commissioning crew is, every member of that crew has the right when they depart or when the ship is retired, decommissioned, they have the right to, they own a plank of the vessel, one of the wooden planks. That has gone, they can select what part of the ship they want to take with them when the ship no longer needs it. That has progressed into some part of the ship, so on. And the whole idea about that is when you are the first member of the vessel's crew, then you own a piece of that ship for the rest of your life because you gave birth to it. So in modern times, there are very few plank owners around. You go from ship to ship, and you still have that right. So we have the significance on the Wheeler is we have plank owners that were here 40 years ago, 39 years ago when the ship was commissioned, that are still working on this ship. That's the unique, usually a plank owner is long gone. And so it's a tradition if they want to find the ship, sometime 20, 30 years later. But on here, people are still here. So we've had, recently, we've had people retiring that I've given a piece of the ship to because they were plank owners. Although I didn't give them a plank, I gave them a ship's wheel or, some part that we had replaced in the past from the original. So as the ship is modernized through the years, I save the old parts that would be good for, to give as retirement gifts to the plank owners that leave.
Yeah, I think that is fascinating and really speaks to the emotion between a crew and their ship.
Yes.
And I think it's special. It's neat that the dredges within the Corps of Engineers continue that tradition. So thanks for sharing that with us. All right,
Pleasure.
so I'm gonna go to our third panelist, moving to Barry Sullivan and the mat sinking unit. And by way of introduction, Barry, anytime I mention the mat sinking unit, whether in my notes to the region or other correspondence, or I'm bragging about the visit I made to with your vessels there, I get a lot of interest in return. Folks that are curious about it, they hear about it, but don't understand its significance. So if you can start us off with an overview of the mat sinking unit and how it supports the USACE mission.
Yes, ma'am. Did really enjoy having you out there and look forward to having you back out there again. I've still got your boots on the shelf, so they're waiting for you. The mat sinking unit supports, in fact, all three of us, Jane, Ed, and myself, are supporting the same mission. We're supporting commerce that is vital to this country. And basically what the mat sinking unit's mission, overall mission, is to keep the Mississippi River in the current channel configuration it's in, pretty much. You know, I've given the analogy to people that if you were driving from here to Jackson, Mississippi, and you know, from Vicksburg to Jackson, and you got halfway there and the interstate turned and went out toward the coast, and the last time you were there, it carried you to Jackson, it would be a problem. And that's exactly what, if you look at the old scars on the Mississippi River, that's exactly what it has done historically. And that's created all these oxbow lakes and what are beautiful, but it makes for a very difficult situation to have a steady, viable highway for our goods and services. And just an example, we all deal with barges. All three of us have worked with barges and the commerce on the river. And one barge, typical barge, is about 58 18-wheelers worth of product. And so a typical 35 barge tow is 2,000 18-wheelers that are not on our nation's highways. And so it's vital that that stays open. So what we try to do is stabilize the banks, and that is done through the leadership of our channel improvement team. We work for 3 different districts, Memphis, Vicksburg, and New Orleans. They set up their priority sites. They lay out and design the way that they want the bank protected. And then we take our assets, which consists of our mat boat, which is a 1948 model, and she's still floating. We do patch her up pretty regularly, but she's still doing her job. And we have the mat boat, the associated barges like our mooring barge, which actually kind of works like the tractor that pulls the planter. And the mat boat is kind of the planter that plants the concrete in the water. But if you don't have a tractor that works, you can't plant very many acres. And then we have 43 mat supply barges that we have to transport the mat from the 3 different casting fields to the sites. And we go through, on a good day, 5 or 6 of those barges. So it's a pretty good challenge for our motor vessels that we have. We have one tender on site, the motor vessel Harrison. Then we have the William James, which is a 3,300 horsepower boat. And then we have the Benyard, which is 4,260. They support this whole mission by pushing us and or the mat boat. Basically, we make a trip about 1,800 miles a year, doing about 5 to 10 miles an hour. So that covers that time. We are able to do that because of a wide variety of folks, even private contractors that pour and cast the mats that support this mission. And our mat boat, as I mentioned, is a 1948 model, and you and I have talked about, and a lot of people, but some people may not be aware of Armor One, which is the new, more robotic mat boat that is scheduled to come out for sea trials in 22, and is scheduled to replace the current mat boat in 2023. We have approximately, and people say, well, you know, it might say, well, do you not know exactly how many your employees you have? Well, that varies on a weekly basis, because out of the number we have, between 250 and 300 employees, people get other jobs. They decide that this is not for them, and they go home. And so I've got people that have been out there for a few months, and I've got people that have been out there for many, many years, and have started out. In fact, my assistant chief started out as a tying tool operator on the mat deck, and now he's the assistant chief of the unit, and he's been out there most of his life. And so it's a unique opportunity for us to be able to do what we do, and to be able to keep the river exactly where it's at. We do run into challenges. sometimes the current is nice to us, sometimes it's not. And our folks on that vessel have to try to line that mat up with the current to where it kind of splits on the front and back side of it. As we go perpendicular out into the river. We're laying 140 foot wide or narrower sometimes, concrete quilt that we make up on the deck as we go. And we go up to 900 feet out perpendicular to the flow. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of forces working in many different directions out there. And sometimes you'll have the extreme, and we experienced this last year. We had very fast current running upstream in an eddy when we started the mat. By the time we got out very far, not very far at all, we had very extreme current about the same velocity, probably around 10 feet per second, coming downstream. So it's hard to, that's one of the biggest challenges for my folks on the ground out there, is to line that up and get it to where it will lay properly, because it can either tear the mat off the front like a paper towel with too much pressure on the front, or it'll actually float that 3-inch thick concrete mat on the water 25, 30 feet out in front of the boat if you've got too much current on the backside of it. So our team is really, they have gotten really good at adapting to a lot of changes. Of course, one of the changes that came up in last year was our coronavirus situation, and we live, work, and eat together, much like the Wheeler. And with 250 to 300 people out there, we usually would go home every other weekend. That was not going to work last year so far as the exposure levels. So we went to 25 days straight at a time. We don't get off the vessel unless for basically a hospitalization or the death of a family member. And we literally stay on the vessel and don't get on the bank, don't go to town or anything like that. And that's very different from what the crew had been used to being able to do in the past. They could go in the personal vehicle and go to town at night and then come back, or if they were close to home, they could go home and spend the night and come back. So all that changed last year. But I'm very proud of the way that the crew has handled that. And we still have that mission to support. We still have families, are glad to be able to support roughly 300 families off of that unit. And our folks earn their keep, they earn their money that they go home to. And so we come out and we do our work and we go home to our families.
Yeah, Barry, thanks for that description. You know, I find that you really got to see it to appreciate it. It's incredible, the coming together of so many different types of vessels that kind of form a flotilla and move their way together, being resupplied by the mat barges, and watch that mat roll off that the mechanical barge that you've got that lays the mat on the bank of the river. It is absolutely incredible, and I didn't appreciate it until I was out there and watched it. And this is not for the faint of heart. I mean, it is hard work. Every little detail, all the wires, all the lashing together of the different rows of concrete mat, the maintenance of this very ancient system that we've got, patched together, improved over decades in order to meet new needs and be even more efficient. It is absolutely incredible. And I would encourage our audience to, you know, go on YouTube and type in mat sinking unit and watch. There's like 3 or 4 videos that show that mat coming off and going on the bank of the river. Absolutely amazing. And so real, you know, I'm so proud you all as well, that the work is hard, the weather is unforgiving, sometimes the condition of the river are unforgiving, but you keep driving on, and really we would not have the Mississippi River as it looks right now if it weren't for the mat sinking unit that's been doing this since the 40s with pretty much the same equipment and small improvements, and staying safe the whole time. So anyway, really encourage our audience to look at some video of it because it's just so impressive. So you mentioned that you could have 200 to 300 crew members at any one time on this floating city, as we're calling it. That must take a lot of preparation. So, what you as a leader and supervisor of all of this and making sure all the pieces come together, what does it take to prepare for the sinking season?
Well, it begins as soon as we get off the river. As soon as we come in, of course, we try to let people take their leave because they haven't been able, we don't get to take as much leave during the time because, of the needs of the positions. But when we come in, we typically encourage people to take their leave, and then we begin our layup process. And I guess I've got kind of a nuts and bolts explanation. We come in and we fix what we broke and we go do it again. And so we just have a never-ending process of patching barges that are sinking. The sinking unit, the boat named the sinking unit, that could have been a problem, but as I mentioned, I think earlier, but there are a lot of, we put barges on dry dock. We do a lot of the work in-house. We also reach out to Inslee. It's been great support in Memphis up there. They do a lot of work for us. And when we have to lift our mat boats, that's where we go and do those processes. This last year, year before that, we replated an 8-foot wide, an 8-foot wide section all the way across the bottom of the mat boat. And then this past season, we did another 8-foot wide section across there. When I say replaced, you can't replace it because it's a single hull boat and all the equipment above it you can't cut away, so you have to just weld on and do. Then on the deck on that mat boat has about 8,000 of those rollers, metal rollers on it. And we replace those as we go, but probably every couple of years we have to replace the whole 8,000 of them because they get a lot of, they get rust and they get concrete debris and all that on them. So, and when they get to where they don't roll properly, it causes a problem with launching the mat down. And we have also, just as a side note, between our quarter boats, our mooring barge, and the mat boat, we have right at 6 megawatts of power generation capability out there. And because of that and all that, and we carry roughly 15 bulldozers and a couple of tracos with us. We carry fuel barges. We have 2 300,000 gallon fuel barges. We keep one with us at all times. In these long seasons that we've done in the past few years, we burn roughly 1.2 million gallons of diesel in 6 months, based, for power generation and for the operation of the equipment. But all of that can't happen without the crew, and our crew has really been just great. I mean, with that many people, yes, you're going to have a few problems, but 95% of the people out there don't give us any problems, and we're blessed to have them.
Yeah, and they are really proud to be associated with the mat sinking unit. Here in Vicksburg, I occasionally run into employees that have retired out of the Vicksburg District, and they'll say, I was with the mat sinking unit, whether it was their whole career or a portion of it, but they will be sure to tell me that they were with the mat sinking unit for a period of time. They're incredibly proud of it, and I can definitely see why. So we're coming down to the last few minutes. I just want, if you could clarify one thing for us, Barry. Both of us have used the phrase sinking season. why is the sinking season limited to certain times of the year?
Yes, it is basically that way because of water levels. We have to have exposed bank or something to push off of. We basically do a one-arm push-up off the bank. Our mooring barge or spar barges, depending on how far we're out, have to heel against the bank, and that's what the bulldozers help hold that barge to keep it from running up the bank. And so we have to get perpendicular to the bank, but we have to have enough bank there to support. For one thing, we have to have the dozers out there to not only hold back the barge that's trying to push against the bank to keep it from riding up the bank. We also have to position it with multiple bulldozers. And then also is when we drive our anchors in the ground, the bulldozers line up and are tied to groups of anchors. So they serve as backup until we lay the mat to keep from pulling the anchors out of the ground. So every time we move, we rotate downstream. It's kind of like a dance. We rotate downstream, we move upstream with all the bulldozers. Everything has to move in conjunction. Of course, we use our radios to make all that work right. And sometimes in swift water, the boats are involved to help us get in on the next spot. And then we tie off and start building new mat. Because the mat boat, it has room for 2 launches, which a launch is is 25 feet long. So the individual squares that are cast for us are made up of, I believe it's 13 individual blocks. The old mats were 16. And they're a 4 foot by 25 foot piece of concrete and that is articulated. And we sew those together like a quilt, and we have 2 rows of those. And then once we get those sewn together, we back out and let those launch over the front. And then we tie some more together and back out. And we have a supply barge behind us, as I mentioned earlier, that our cranes go out to and pick up the additional mat. And we just basically sew it together as we go. And so it takes a lot of coordination on that. And the workers right now take something that looks like a jackhammer, and they tie each of those. There's a tying tool, and you've seen them. They use about a 16-inch copper wire that's about 1/8 inch in diameter, and it does a counter-rotational wrap around it, and it ties the wires that come out of each individual square to a launching cable, and then that's what allows us to keep the whole thing together and back out. Now, those launching cables are made out of just ferrous metal, and they're designed to rust away. But the ties and the ties are copper coated steel, and the fabric within each square is stainless steel. And that's what holds it in place for a lifetime of up to 50 years. And last year at the end of that long season, I just wanted to kind of, I grew up in a farming area. I just said, I wonder how many acres, if we just laid it out like floor tile, how many acres what we put out last year would cover. And it would have covered, and I had to kind of recalculate it. I said, maybe that's not right. And so I did my numbers a few times. We put out enough concrete to cover a solid area of 610 acres, which is basically a section in that 1 7-month season last year.
Yeah, phenomenal work, Barry. Again, kudos to your whole team. That was an incredible season. I saw you the day that the season ended. We happened to run into each other in the parking lot. So incredible, and the most challenging year probably as well, yes, because of the pandemic. So, hey, look, we are out of time. This has been a great conversation. I want to thank the 3 of you for taking time out of your schedules to join us today. It's not easy given your schedules, but also given the technology. Barry had to leave his flotilla and go to an office shoreside so that he could join us today. I appreciate that. And it's very special to have Ed joining us from the Wheeler itself. And I'm glad the technology worked out. So thank you for joining us today. I do want to close with a message really to everybody who works in the fields that you represent, but across our ops community, out in the field, and everybody that works physically on the river. We truly appreciate what you do every day. And in this region, we see the variety of climates. We have our folks working in the heat of summer in the lower valley, the cold of the winter in the upper valley, and everything in between. And this work largely takes place out in the elements. Our folks are exposed and their equipment exposed to the elements. And then lately add to that the challenges really of what's turning into 2 operating seasons in the midst of a pandemic. Our dredgers, the lock and dam operators, the mat sinking unit, all the other work boats that run up and down the river all year round, our survey vessels, those who maintain our lake projects, our hydropower teams. Thank you for what you do. You've been there every step of the way, making a difference and, ensuring that this engine of the American economy continues no matter what the challenge is. It is an honor to serve with you as we collectively serve our nation. I also want to take the opportunity to thank the team that put this together, our public affairs folks, Mary Miller Ratcliffe, Lisa Parker, Willie Day, Cameron Rice, our other public affairs professionals that helped get the word out about this event. And then in closing, to our audience, I want to thank all of you who tuned in today to listen to this episode of In the Valley. This forum a year ago, or almost a year ago now, was born as a desire to talk about our people, to highlight the diverse group of employees who come together as one team in many different ways, doing many different things from all walks of life to deliver a program that not only benefits our region, but also does so in a very direct way for our nation. Each of you makes a difference, and I'm so grateful to be on your team. So thanks again for all that you do. I look forward to our next engagement, and in the meantime, stay safe, essay ons, and building strong. Take care, everybody. Thank you.